Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2, and today I am really excited to show you guys what is probably the best build in the game for farming Chaos Chambers like super quickly by taking advantage of a ton of extra spell damage to then increase our gun damage, while also enabling our spells to do a ton of damage themselves at the same time. What's crazy about this build is that we gain about an extra 300% damage from a bunch of on-kill effects that aren't even active while fighting these bosses that you see on screen, so the mob clearing potential actually ends up being like super insane while still being able to kill bosses pretty quickly. I also made sure that this build doesn't take advantage of any bugs, exploits, or anything like that, and there will be some extra gameplay of a fairly quick Chaos 20 at the end of the video. Overall, the build is a ton of fun and is very easy to use, and the build probably has like the most amount of different ways to set up than any other build in the game. So if there's like a certain spell that you like using, a certain damage type, if you want the build to be more oriented towards bosses or towards making your spells do a lot more damage, you can certainly change up to your preference and still destroy everything while just following the fundamental building blocks of the build. The craziest part about this is that my setup is like super far from perfect, and I can't even imagine how good it will be once certain things are optimized. The build does have a lot of moving pieces, and it took me forever to set up, so if you enjoyed the video, I'd greatly appreciate you dropping a like, and something like 80% of you guys or something aren't subscribed, so if you enjoy the content, please feel free to subscribe. I'm making a ton more build videos, but anyways, let's get into it. Alright, so there is a lot to cover when it comes to this build, so certain things I'm going to try to just speedrun. First off, on our speedrun checklist is the hero stats. All crit chance, all crit damage, and then either spell cooldown or skill cooldown, depending on which one is bothering you more. If you want to use your spells more often, use a spell. If you want your enchants via your skills active more often, then use a skill cooldown. You don't have a lot of extra stat there, so it really doesn't matter. In terms of how the build is actually functioning, so yesterday I made a video talking about pixie weapons. If you haven't seen that, feel free to check it out, but basically the TLDR is that these Fear Not pixie weapons, as well as the Bloodshot shotgun pixie weapons, these particular ones, there's not any other Furior pixie weapons in the game other than this Crossbolt one and this Bloodshot one that I showed you guys here. These ones are the only ones that are going to scale off of both spell damage and companion damage, okay? These things are not going to scale off of gun damage. This is what allows our build to get out of control, but it also allows us to get a whole bunch of extra damage that you otherwise can't with a lot of different builds. This is also the primary reason that this build can be a little bit confusing, because there's so many different routes that you can go with all the gear. This build video is going to be very focused on a lot of the gear options that you guys have. Of course, I will include a save file so you can download, anything that I'm using here, but there's a lot of different options that you have for this setup. So let's just quickly talk about the skill tree. Just know that the majority of this build is just built around getting as much spell damage or companion damage as possible, having a nice little mix between those so that your Fear Not or whatever pixie weapon you're using just absolutely shreds. And then on top of that, because you're getting all that spell damage, inherently you can make your spell do pretty good damage as well. But there's a lot of different ways to set it up. You could instead focus. It's like a teeter-totter, right? You could either be right in the middle and have your pixie do good damage and then also have your spell do good damage, or you could go fully down into spell damage or fully down into your pixie. But going full into spell damage will also benefit your pixie. You can kind of see why this is so strong, because you're able to benefit from things multiple ways, right? So you're not only doing good damage with your spells, but you're also doing good damage with your gun. You don't have to fully commit to one or the other. Hopefully that makes sense. I understand that could be a little bit confusing. Alright, so when it comes to the skill tree, obviously we're going to be playing Spellshot and Graveborn here. Graveborn is the biggest thing because we're using a class item that's going to increase our Ascension, which gives us a whole bunch of additional spell damage. Ends up being 120% extra spell damage, which is pretty nice. Spellshot is mainly just for the spell weaving stacks, and we get some default, pretty good stuff within the tree here. If you don't want to play Spellshot, I guess you could play like Stabbo, but I'm not going to be covering how you would set that up. But Spellshot overall is going to be really good. We get the spell crit here. The reload speed isn't all that bad. You might be thinking, why on earth would you max out fire rate? I was told that this works with the pixies. I haven't been diligent enough to test, so it doesn't really matter. You don't have to put the 5 points into the fire rate. You could put the points into Font of Mana, and you likely wouldn't notice all that much of a difference. The reason that we omit magic bullets is because the pixie does not scale off of gun damage at all. It's only going to scale off of companion and spell damage, so getting the gun damage here does not matter. You get the 30% spell damage with glass cannon, and then we get a high thread count. If you want more survivability, you can decide to opt out of glass cannon, and then we need high thread count. Again, gun damage isn't going to help us, so we don't go for one slot, one kill. In Graveborn tree, we get Faithful Thralls. This doesn't really help us all that much. The reason being is that we're not really going to get companions all that often. You can particularly take advantage of this on bosses if you have a separate weapon that is going to spawn companions. Pixies right now do not work with Faithful Thralls. If that ends up getting fixed, this build is going to be even better because you're constantly going to have extra damage through that. Put a couple points into spell cooldown rate. some points into additional dark magic damage. The only reason for this is that Harvest basically ends up getting insanely broken if you just keep playing over and over again. I made sure in all of the gameplay, and I will show you guys a run here where Harvest isn't stacked up at all. I've made multiple videos on this. Whenever you enter a portal while Harvest is active, it'll basically keep the stacks, so then this ends up scaling up to like 500% extra damage, and then your dark magic damage just one-shot stuff. So if you continue to play, that's crazy about this build, if you just continue to play, it gets even better, but all the gameplay that I've shown so far is without me even playing more than one run at a time. I do one run and then I go to the main menu, just because I want it to be accurate. But if you played like 2 runs back to back, the second run you do like much faster just because of Harvest, without even intentionally doing anything. And then just Dark Pact, because Sanguine Sacrament forced some survivability here. You get a whole bunch of extra healing whenever you use a spell, and we're using an Ice Spike with 4 charges, so you can have this up fairly often. I have Hydras just for the chance to spawn. We proc a lot of our kill skills with Morheim's Blessing in the form of using our Ice Spike, which then has a chance to proc this, which is then going to increase our damage with Faithful Thralls. Alternatively, you could go for Stain of the Soul. I didn't notice Stain of the Soul really helping out my damage all that much. It doesn't seem to really scale very well. I could be completely wrong on this, but from what I saw, it doesn't really help, so I just decided to omit it. But if for whatever reason you think that this is good, you could decide to swap out of Dark Hydra, or Dark Pact, or Sanguine Sacrament, put some points in there. Ascension is really good. We get the extra spell damage. I have 3 from a class mod here, as you can tell by the blue text. So by default, this is going to give you 60% extra spell damage at max stacks, but this is going to give us 120% as well as basically doubling our health, which is really good. Get the extra damage through Lord of Edges, and then Blast Gasp. I have not tested this extensively enough. I'm going to keep this on because I know that it works with spells. I don't know how well it works with my pixies. From what I've seen, it doesn't do very much damage with pixies. So for now, I'm kind of ignoring that. There's another version of this build where you use a class item, a paradigm, I believe is what it's called, where it's going to convert spell damage into ability damage, and then if this procs, you could do a whole bunch of damage that way. I don't really know all that much about that because with pixies, it doesn't seem to do a lot of damage. I need to do more testing on that, but regardless, the build is good how it is, and I like to use it just because. And then we have Morheim's Blessing. Whenever he casts a skill, it's going to proc our kill skills, which is going to proc Dark Hydra and Ascension, namely. As you can tell already, there's a lot of variation. In terms of the rest of the variation, when it comes to your weapons, obviously we kind of already talked about this. You want to use a Furior, either a pistol which has the text crossbolt and it will be called a Fear Knot, or you want to use a Bloodshot shotgun, so that it scales off of both spell and companion damage. In terms of what element you want, I'm using Cryo for this because I wanted to use an Ice Spike, but if you want to use fire and then use a fire spell, or you want to use dark magic and use a dark magic spell and convert all your damage to dark magic through a class item, you can do that. You can do any element that you want with this. I like this just because the Ice Spike is really good, and generally I like Cryo, and Cryo is very strong. But there's a ton of options that you have here. If you want to take advantage of the fact that Graveborn has a whole bunch of extra dark magic damage, and then you want to use a class item like this one that's going to convert all companion damage into dark magic damage, which will then work with your pixie, that is particularly good as well. And then you could use something like a Buffmeister to increase your gun damage, and you could go full out on just increasing the gun, making it do a whole bunch of extra dark magic damage. And then that's also going to inadvertently make Harvest do a whole bunch of extra damage as well, because it's going to take extra dark magic damage whenever the companion damages that enemy, blah blah blah. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do this. I'm just going to go over the options that I like to use and exactly everything that I'm using. So we already talked about the weapons pretty much. I'd like to have a Masterwork Handbow just in my inventory, just so that I can swap to it and get some spellweaving stacks. Like I mentioned earlier, I'd recommend having a Hydra in your inventory so that whenever you engage a boss, you can throw this down on the floor just to get your spellweaving stacks up, but also you can get some Hydras on the floor so that you gain Faithful Thralls, just so you do a little bit more damage on bosses, because that's the only part where this build is going to lack a little bit, but it's still really good for bosses regardless. For your melee weapon, you want to use Goblin Pickaxe for the movement speed, accuracy to cooldown rate, and the spell cooldown rate. We'll talk about enchants in a second here. When it comes to your spells themselves, I'm using a Ice Spike. You can use whatever you want. I like this one. It has 4 charges. It just does a whole bunch of damage, as you can see in the gameplay. If you want your gun to do more damage, you could use like a Buffmeister, or if you're playing any other sort of a setup, you could use like this Dark Magic spell here, or you could use a Sunder spell. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. Your pixies will carry you regardless. When it comes to the necklace, so there's 3 different options here that I like to use. Of course, whatever element you're using, you want that damage, and then ideally you want Spellshot power to increase your spellweaving stack potency, so then you gain additional spell damage that way, and then you want all damage dealt. There are two subtext here that are good. There's actually a third one, I don't remember what it is, but 2 subtexts that you mainly want. Either when a companion kills an enemy, companion damage is increased by 20%, so that's 100% extra damage with your pixies, which is crazy. Alternatively, to make your spells do more damage, you can get this one where whenever you cast a spell, it's going to reduce your action skill cooldown, which is really good with the Ice Spike because you can get pretty much 100% uptime on whatever spell you're using to then proc your enchants. So that's pretty good, and then while your action skill is on cooldown, it's going to increase your spell damage by 30%, which will of course work for your pixies and your spells themselves. So this is mainly going to benefit your spell damage, and then the alternative option is going to benefit your companions more for mobbing. So that's kind of up to you. You can always also use the neck, which is really good, where whenever your companion gets a crit, it's going to increase your crit damage by 30%. That is also a really good option here. And of course, like I mentioned, you want to go for whatever element you're using, plus Spellshot power if possible, plus all damage dealt. For the class item, this is where things get really weird, and there's a ton of different options, and I have not tested every option because it is ridiculously hard to get class items in this game, but also there's so many different moving pieces with this build that it's like incredibly difficult to tell what's good. I'm using a Diamond Gauntlet because I like the fact that it increases my frost damage while standing still, and I gain increased crit, and it's going to give me 3 stacks of Ascension, which is going to give me a whole bunch of extra spell damage. I like this because I just wanted to feel like my spell was actually pretty good, and whenever I stand still, it does seem to benefit my pixie if I stand still and then throw them out, and it does seem to benefit the frost damage there. Does it actually? I don't know 100%. It's impossible to test certain things in this game when you have everything set up. Like, it's insane. So I would honestly recommend just experimenting. I'll give you guys some options that are good. So this one is good. Converting all damage into, for example, dark magic damage is a very good option there. You could get a smart armor in the form of crit chance is reduced, but critical hit damage is increased. Or you can use what I'm using, where when you're standing still, increased damage. Or if you're using a fire weapon, you can get one that increases fire damage by 10% for each unique enemy hit. I think that a fire one might actually end up being the best in slot setup for this and going all fire damage, because that's 100% extra damage. No other class item compares to 100% extra damage, but it is so hard to get what you want. On the class item itself, you either want a Spellshot power one that is going to increase high thread count, or you want a Graveborn one that is going to increase Ascension. If you could somehow get these on the same roll, that would be insane. I don't think that exists. Ideally, you know, Spellshot power is going to benefit you more than Graveborn power is. Graveborn power doesn't really help us with this build all that much, but I just like using this one because Ascension is a very, very strong thing to have some points into, and then increasing the frost damage while standing still is also good, and you also have all damage dealt, but you can get like companion damage, companion crit, like you can get some insane ones. Let me see if I have any on me. 21% all damage dealt I'm missing, 30% spell damage, 35% spell crit, like you can get 42% companion crit, like you can get some crazy stuff on here, and like my class item is probably the worst item that I have with this whole build, so the fact that this could be improved to where I get like 30-40% extra damage, that would be really crazy. But if I just decided to use a 50% crit with a smart armor and Spellshot power, my spell would do even more damage, but this ends up being pretty good, and of course the game save will have all of these so you guys can feel free to test as much as you want. When it comes to the rings, I go for full companion damage here. Again, if you want your spells to do more damage, you can do that. The reason that I go for companion damage and not spell damage, so that I'm benefiting both things, is that my spell damage is going to scale so high already with all of the enchants and all the things that I have in my tree here with spell weaving stacks, etc. So there's going to be a lot of diminishing returns once I get past, like, you know, 100% increase extra spell damage, whereas I'm not increasing my companion damage by all that many multipliers. So this has been mainly just going to mathematically end up being more damage for my pixie than extra spell damage would. But of course, if you wanted more spell damage to make your Ice Spike do more, I'm missing out on like over 40% spell damage, right? So I could very easily swap this and probably not notice too much of a difference. This is just what I was playing with. In terms of what you want on the actual ring, you want it to be a mood ring, so while ward is not full, effects are increased, and that's going to pair perfectly with a Cursed Wit, which we're pretty much always going to be using to just increase your damage by 100% whenever it's down. But alternatively, you could use whatever you want. If you don't really need that much damage, you don't need the 100%, so if you want to use a body rune for survivability as well as getting extra damage to like fire or something like that, feel free to do that, or you could use a Chamois, entirely up to you. But going back to the rings, you want it to have probably a spell crit damage or companion crit damage Crit damage is what you want rather than crit chance. Crit chance is not bad though. In terms of the enchants that you want, so you want while action skill is active, increase companion damage because your pixie is going to count as a companion. And then you want elemental damage. If you're using dark magic, elemental damage is not going to increase dark magic damage from my testing. And if you're using dark magic, you want the enchanted Graveborn. When a Graveborn action skill is activated, give you 50% extra dark magic damage. You then want on action skill start, increase spell damage by 40%. That's overall very good. And then you want while action skill is active, increase whatever element you're using, dark magic, fire, or frost. There's some alternative options here. Instead of the companion damage, if you wanted to benefit all things, you could go a flat 20% on action skill start, which I actually have the same roll of. So if you wanted to do that with this game save, you could do that. And then that's going to benefit your spells and your companions. I noticed that it didn't really help out my spell that much, so I'd rather just have the additional damage in the form of the Fear Not. My setup is a bit more oriented toward mob clearing than it is making my spell do a lot of damage, but my spell does enough damage for me to be happy with. I haven't tinkered enough with the build. I probably could make it a little bit more oriented towards the spell while not losing out all that much with my pixie, but it is incredibly hard to test like I've mentioned, so this is just a setup that I have going for me right now. There's a lot of different ways to set it up. Sorry if any of that was confusing, but let's just get into some gameplay. So like I mentioned before, Harvest is frequently bugged. For some reason I have kill skills active that are just sitting there, so I'm going to quit game and then I'm going to just load right back in so you guys can see that there's nothing weird going on in terms of bugs. I'm not taking advantage of Harvest, but again, if you just kept playing, you would, like, without even trying, you would just stack up Harvest a bunch, right? And then that would make your damage really crazy. We're going to do a featured run here. I'll try to do it a little bit quickly. I've done it in like 5 minutes. I'll try to do it a little bit faster. So we're going to throw out some Hydras here just to get some Faithful Thralls and our Spell Weaving up. Pop our thing. And then we'll throw out some Pixies, and then they're literally just going to run around and kill everything. And as you can see, we can make our spell do pretty good damage here. And that's without our Ascension stacked up at all, right? And that's kind of just the main point, is just to have some fun with it. You could use a Buffmeister, and you could probably do things faster if I'm being completely honest, but I like just having the Ice Spike. I would kill myself with a barrel, but that's okay. And as you can see, that guy gets annihilated. And then we're done with the floor. And that's without Harvest bugged. That is without Harvest bugged. If we had Harvest bugged out, we would have done that. Oh, I should have got the other floor. If ours was bugged out, we'd, kill stuff even faster, because that ends up, the dark magic damage from Harvest ends up kind of just carrying you. And that is something that is unavoidable. I wish that they would, fix that, but that's alright. It's kind of just, it kind of only benefits me. It makes the build, better than it actually is if you just play more and more. But Harvest isn't going to stack, like, you won't notice Harvest stacking after, like, doing, a couple floors. But if you do, like, 2 Chaos Chambers back to back, you'll notice, like, my companions are doing a lot of dark magic damage. I wonder what's going on there. As you can see, the Pixies kind of just fly around and kill stuff. I don't really like this floor for this build. Kind of annoying, but that's just me. I'll make one of the rooms elite. I keep forgetting to do that. Kind of just playing. As you can see, I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to using the Hydras that I have for Faithful Thralls, because, like, the damage increase is fairly negligible, so I don't really go for it. I also don't always stand still when I do stuff. Right there, I made sure to for my Ice Spike, but if I stood still, my Pixies would probably do more damage. But I mean, dude, look how fast we cleared that. Like, I can go kill that badass guy from the... Here, we'll make this elite. I can go kill that badass guy, and then my Pixies will literally just kill everything else. This floor is particularly good if I don't die. I need to make sure not to die. If I die, my enchants go away. That's not a good time. But we'll make sure not to die here. And then my Pixies can kind of just carry everything. They take a little bit to get stacked up, but once they get stacked up, as you can see, they do some pretty solid damage. And then I'll make sure to activate my thing when Pigwort comes out, because he's particularly annoying. You guys are a little tanky though, to be honest. Alright, what's up, Pigwort? No, get away. Get away. Yeah, this guy is certainly tanky versus this, because he just resists everything. I don't remember him resisting everything the last time that I ran this. I remember him dying a lot faster. So, I guess that's the only downside so far, is that Pigwort did not die as fast as I had hoped, but still pretty good. Still pretty good. Oh, it's because I made the floor elite, isn't it? Yeah, that's probably what happened. That's probably what happened. Ooh. Kill the Dragon Lord statue pretty quick. Kill this guy. I whiffed. That's okay, my pixies will carry me, that's alright. Not a whole lot to say anymore. Somehow I'm out of ammo because I guess I forgot to refill before I started the run, so that is certainly not ideal for our time. Hopefully I can get some. I'm just running around here. Oh, I think I got high thread count as one of my buffs. That's really good. That is very solid for me. But yeah, I'm not going for like some world record speedrun or something. I don't really attempt anything like that in this game. I don't think there's a point. But I'm kind of just showing, hey, you know, this is what you can do. I see people posting their times, flexing their times. A little cringe, I might say. A little cringe to flex the times when there's so much variability, but I guess if people care, figure I may as well show you what the build is capable of, I suppose. But the fact that the pixies just kind of fly around and do everything for you, I don't know if there's any build that really has a chance, because it'll just kill things that aren't even, you know, on your screen, and it kills them near instantly, right? So kind of hard for any other build to be able to do things nearly as fast. Oop. And then having the ice spikes for those is just fun. Alright. Got another room. You know, it says that the runs are done in 5 minutes. This does not feel like 5 minutes. This feels longer than that, I'm gonna be honest. I think this is the last floor that we have, though. I'm trying to just do it without editing so that you guys can see the 5 minutes, because I was like, you know, if it's a 5-minute run, I may as well not edit it. That's not too long. I usually do gameplay that's about that long, so that's not too bad, but it feels longer than that. I don't know. Maybe I'm smoking. I wonder if it counts the time that you take to, like, enter a portal. Oh, we're already on the boss. So the boss isn't going to be as good as, you know, a lot of other builds. The bossing is slightly slow, but you could go for a more boss-oriented setup and do way more damage. The thing is that a lot of your damage is based on, like, getting kills. That is not just, it's not going to be active when you fight the boss. So as you can see, it takes like a second to get fully ramped up, because my pets need to get some kills and I need to get some kill skill stuff activated. So the bossing could certainly be improved, but if you get blast gas procs, if you go for, you know, full spell damage or whatever, or you even make your pixies more insane, or you just take advantage of the, you know, everything bugging out, you could do even more damage. So I did in 6 minutes. That's not particularly great. I did one earlier in like 5 minutes and 30 seconds, which I'll put on the screen. Up to you guys to believe me or not that there was any bugs or anything happening. This one was just a little bit slower than normal. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.